Welcome back to Divorce and Child Custody Discussion, another episode. I'm your host, Brian A. Victor, family law attorney, mediator, and licensed marriage family therapist. And I've spent over a decade helping parents navigate the most challenging aspects of child custody. Today's topic is one that comes up every year: summer break and vacation custody conflicts. However, before we get started, let me quickly thank all my loyal listeners, as I try to do each and every podcast, because listenership of this podcast grows every episode. And as I always say, you, the listener, are the reason I produce this podcast. So thank you for your continued support, and remember to click subscribe so that you don't miss any upcoming or past podcast episodes. And thank you to FeedSpot for naming this podcast one of the top 15 divorce podcasts to listen to. And finally, a huge thank you to Million Podcasts. They named this podcast one of the top 40 mediation podcasts and listed it at number 2 of their top 30 best child custody podcasts. So thank you. And remember, as always, the goal of this podcast is to educate. And nothing in this podcast constitutes legal advice or creates an attorney-client relationship. All right, so now on to this podcast episode. And for many families, summer should be a time of fun, relaxation, and making memories. However, for divorced or separated parents, summer can quickly become a source of conflict, especially when the parenting plan lacked clarity or when communication breaks down. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through some of the common summer custody pitfalls, also what courts expect from parents during this time, and finally, how to handle travel disputes in a way that keeps the focus on your children. First, let's talk about the problem with summer break. So here's the reality. Summer schedules often don't fit neatly into standard parenting plans. School's out. Daycare may not be available, and parents often want to take extended trips with their children, sometimes out of state or even out of the country. That's when things get complicated. Many parenting plans include general language like, each parent gets 2 weeks of vacation time with the child during summer. That's great. But what happens when both parents pick the same weeks? One parent doesn't give advance notice, or one parent wants to take the child somewhere the other parent disagrees with. Now, these aren't just theoretical problems, they're very real, and they're the source of a large number of emergency court filings every summer. So let's talk about the common custody conflicts during summer. Here are 3 of the most common conflicts I've seen, both in court and in mediation. First, lack of notice. One parent tells the other, I'm taking the kids to Hawaii next week, with no prior discussion. This often violates notice provisions in the custody order, and it almost always creates distrust. Second, disagreements about travel. International trips especially raise red flags. One parent might worry the other won't return the children or object to the destination due to safety concerns or political issues. Third, overlapping plans. If both parents schedule their 2-week summer break for the same time without coordination, conflict is almost inevitable. And unfortunately, it's the child who often ends up caught in the middle. So, how can you prevent summer custody disputes? Well, in order to avoid these disputes, I'm going to try to give you some practical tips, both as a lawyer and as someone who's mediated thousands of custody matters. First, follow the court order. If your parenting plan includes a provision about vacation notice, for example, 30 days advance written notice, then follow it to the letter. Courts take notice rules seriously, especially when travel is involved. Second, communicate early and in writing. Start discussing summer plans several months in advance. Use email or a parenting app like Our Family Wizard to document your requests and agreements. Written communication helps prevent misunderstandings and serves as a record if problems arise later. Third, be specific in your parenting plan. I tell people all the time, the more specific your plan is, the easier it will be to follow. If your current plan is vague, you might want to consider modifying it, either through an agreement or with court approval. Include specific dates, rules for notice, rules for travel, especially international, and how disagreements will be resolved. Fourth, think about your child's needs. Yes, summer is an opportunity for quality time, but that doesn't mean putting your child on 4 separate flights in 6 weeks. Keep transitions minimal and consider what's developmentally appropriate for their age. All right, now we're going to move into a little bit about what do judges expect. So if your summer custody conflicts ends up in court, judges will look at usually 2 key things. 1, did you follow the order? If you fail to give notice, book travel without agreement, or refuse to cooperate, you're likely going to be seen as the parent acting unreasonably. Second, are you putting your child's best interests first? Judges want to see parents who are flexible, communicative, and focused on giving their children a low conflict summer, not just winning their time. Also, judges are very hesitant to change custody orders on short notice, unless there's a real emergency. So filing on July 1st for a trip on July 5th likely won't get you far. All right. We've talked a lot about this, so I'm going to give you some final thoughts. Summer should be a time of growth and joy for your children. But if co-parenting issues aren't handled thoughtfully, that opportunity can be lost. Here's my suggestion. Start planning early. Communicate clearly. Stick to the order. And, if necessary, revisit your parenting plan before next summer to make sure it actually works for both parents. And, most importantly, works for your child. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Divorce and Child Custody Discussion. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a positive review. And if you're preparing for a custody mediation or have suggestions for topics for future episodes, you can contact me at www.brianvictorlaw.com. And be sure to check out my podcast archive for more episodes just like this one. Until next time, take care and keep the focus where it belongs, on your child's well-being.